Hello, I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled that you all seem very awake and on and whatnot, even though we're in the middle of the afternoon. Boa tarde, and that is the extent of my Portuguese. But I want to start out by talking about some slow experiences that I have had recently, that I've gotten to enjoy recently. There we go. When I arrived in Portugal, my husband and I flew into Lisbon, and it was beautiful. It was a wonderful flight in. We stayed overnight, and then we decided to rent a car and drive north. We drove north up kind of toward Fatima and Tomar, decided to drive to Gulga. And there's a few different ways you can go there. You can take the highway. You can go mostly on the A1. Which is very fast. It takes about an hour, maybe a little bit longer. But we decided not to go that route. We decided to take a longer way there. And it was beautiful. We were driving through the countryside. Little towns were kind of unfolding in front of us, it felt like, where you'd be driving along, kind of round a bend. And you built this sense of anticipation, kind of wondering what would be coming next. Wondering what would be around that next curve in the road. And what we were seeing were a lot of beautiful things, a lot of beautiful architecture. It was wonderfully floral. There was a ton of bougainvillea and gorgeous giant hydrangeas. I don't know what goes on with hydrangeas here, but they're huge, like size of your head flowers, which are gorgeous. And that process, it was one of anticipation and discovery. We were learning more about the countryside on the way there, learning more about the typical color schemes in the architecture, seeing lots of whitewashed buildings with blue and yellow on them as well. And it was so exciting to discover through the journey, not just by arriving at the destination as quickly as we possibly could. But in going on that path to Gulga, and seeing kind of the signage along the way and figuring out, okay, we're getting closer and closer despite what maybe the GPS was saying and all. We were learning more about the space, what to expect, maybe what we could expect to see in this little town that we didn't really know a lot about as we were on the way there. We just decided, okay, that seems like it'll be a good destination. We were able to get a hotel room there for the night, not really knowing much about the hotel or where we would be staying. But that was okay. And along the way, we decided, all right, we're going to forego that highway route. Pretty much the entire time. This would have taken an hour. Instead, we decided to take the small roads instead. So kind of a slightly more circuitous route. The path on the left would have taken about an hour. On the right, it took us about 2 hours. Actually, a little bit longer, because along the way, we pulled off at one point because we were passing these fields of poppies. This is actually right next to a petrol station, a gas station, by the side of the road. All these gorgeous poppies growing. When we turned around from there, we didn't even have to stop to put gas in the car. We just decided to stop because of all these flowers. We turned around, and there was this gorgeous field on the side of it as well. We wouldn't have seen this if we were just going up the highway. But that was okay. We took a slower route. We learned along the way. We built that sense of excitement and wonder for the journey. And for what would be coming next. And when we got there, and that worked out pretty well. So I want to take us away now from Gulga instead to Orlando, Florida. This is Disney World. This is the test track attraction at Disney World, at Epcot Center. The test track attraction is designed to take people through a world of automotive design in a fun way, though. And it's been there for more than 20 years now. When it first launched, General Motors was the main sponsor of the ride. As it turns out, a lot of the rides at Disney World, in the Magic Kingdom, and at Epcot are actually sponsored by different corporations. Works out pretty well for them. For a while, General Motors was the main sponsor on this. Then after a while, they decided they didn't want to keep funding it, but one of their sub-brands, Chevrolet, decided to take it on instead. And when they did that, they were deciding, okay, how were they going to reinvest their budget into the ride? And they decided that they were going to leave the ride itself alone. They weren't going to change anything about that. Instead, they decided to invest their time and budget and creativity in enhancing really the pre-ride experience. In other words, everything that happened before you got on the ride. Now, if you've ever been to Disney World, you know what typically happens before you get on most rides is that you wait in line. And sometimes you wait in really long lines in the hot Florida sun. In this case, you're actually waiting inside. But they decided, okay, we're still going to enhance that waiting experience. So what you just saw there were actually people waiting in a line or in a queue. It doesn't really look like that, though, right? Because up here in the front, you've got that gentleman, he's taking pictures of what's going on in this kind of waiting room experience. The girl over here on the right, she's standing at a kiosk designing a vehicle in their little computer processes there. She's designing something that she'll then take through the ride and see how it tests out. So while they're waiting to go on, they're learning more about what will be going on inside. They're learning more about what to expect from the ride itself. They're building that sense of wonder and anticipation. They're really engaged in the moment, building on that anticipation, getting excited about what's going to come next, not just sitting there kind of looking at their watches, waiting for the time to go by or anything like that. Instead, they're creating memories. And I don't mean that in that cheesy, like, come to Disney World and create memories with your family this summer kind of way. I mean that in the way that we actually learn. We build new understanding of information by laying down on existing neural networks. We build new understanding by building on our existing memories. So by engaging with what's going to happen in the ride before they even go into it, they're learning about it so that when they actually get in the ride, they can better understand that. We're constantly layering new information on our existing mental models, mental schemas, those sorts of things. That's exactly what's going on there. And in that way, by being in the moment, building that sense of anticipation, they're having a better experience with the ride as well as waiting to go on the ride. That's a pretty profound thing if you run a theme park where people actually enjoy waiting to go into the experience. So from that, we can take away a few things that I think we can bring into our own work, even if none of us typically design the sort of rides that go into theme parks or anything like that. We can take this understanding that content affects someone's experience, whether they're waiting on a line or not, maybe waiting to go through a checkout process, wondering why paperwork is taking so long to be filed. Content affects our understanding of the experience as well as the experience itself. So two things there, both the experience and our perception of it. So that's a pretty interesting thing that we can work with. When I was doing research on this topic, I reached out initially to Carrie Mahala. She's a content strategist, also based in the US. She grew up in Southern California in the shadow of Disneyland. She grew up going, as many of the kids in Southern California do, with a pass to go to Disney World go to Disneyland all throughout every summer, kind of treating it like any other sort of theme park and all. So she's been there hundreds of times. She's been to Disney World in Florida also many, many times. And she doesn't have young children. She's an adult doing this because she loves the Disney World experience, both as someone that loves Disney, maybe a little too much, but also as a user experience designer and as a content strategist. So I spoke with her about this ride. I said, how did it change when Chevy took it over? And she said, yeah, you wait longer, but it's not so bad. You're really engaged in the experience long before you get there. You're invested in the experience. That's a pretty cool thing. So we can take a look at that and how content really supports that experience by using different media. They've got text that appears at different heights for both adults and little kids. There's kiosks also that appear at different heights so both young children can use them, slightly older kids that are there with their parents, as well as adults. They're reaching out to the audience in different ways, saying, what can we do to engage you, to teach you, to help you build on that sense of discovery? Not all experiences are like that, though. So I also reached out to Jared Spool, who you'll be hearing from shortly. I don't know if Jared is quite the Disney aficionado, but he knows a thing or two about slow experiences and checkout processes especially. And he said, yeah, when people have a frustrating experience, then they rate the checkout as slow. So first they're frustrated, first they're pissed off, and then they say, oh, that took forever. That's the order of operations there. And he said, yeah, when we ask people what's slow, they say it was the thing that was frustrating. What's fast? They say the thing that was delightful. So regardless of how long maybe a checkout experience took, regardless of how long it actually took them, they're saying, well, if I found it frustrating, it must have also taken forever. That's kind of interesting. It doesn't really go with how the real world works, but it builds a lot on our perceptions of the real world. So if we can understand that it's the frustration, not the actual speed, not the number of seconds it takes you to maybe get through a checkout process, complete a form, or maybe wait online for something. It's not the actual speed, but your experience doing those things that affects your perception of it. We need to think about it. Okay, if something is horrible because it took forever, where can we go from there? One place that I go to all too frequently is the Department of Motor Vehicles. I know Jess was just sharing a little bit about how this works so much more efficiently in Canada. I do not live in Canada. It does not work especially efficiently in the United States. But this is a place you would go if, like, say, you have a speeding ticket that you'd like to contest. I should rephrase that. It is not a place you would go if you have a speeding ticket you have to contest. It's a place I go frequently if I have a speeding ticket that I have to contest. And sometimes it looks like this. And it's miserable. It's kind of cold and damp, even in the middle of summer. And the people there are rude. If you don't hear them at first when they call your name or call your number when you walk in, they don't repeat it. You just find that you've been waiting there hours, and they're like, yep, called you hours ago. You should have heard my voice the first time. They don't really invest in things like microphones there for whatever reason. But it's miserable. Sometimes it's not this crowded. Sometimes there's only maybe 1 or 2 people ahead of you in line. But it's still horrible because it's just such a nasty, mean place. So even when I get out of there quickly, I still say, oh my God, that took forever, because it's so frustrating and Byzantine, and the people are pretty rude in there, probably because they deal with people like me all the time. But if we look at that not as frustrated drivers in Massachusetts, but as content strategists and user experience practitioners, and compare it to what goes on at Disney World, we can see, all right, at Disney, they do a good job of creating content that supports the experience for a lot of different types of people, for both adults and their children. At the DMV, no. You either get the content immediately, you either hear them the first time they call your name or your number, or you don't. And too bad. It's going to be miserable. It's going to be frustrating. Even if they put in place processes that make the whole thing run faster and more efficient, it's going to still feel like it takes a long time because it's so frustrating. So we have to ask, would it be enough for the DMV just to speed up their processes? Would it be enough just for things to become that much more efficient, like with the examples that Jess was just showing? That would help, but it's not enough just to make it faster. It also has to be better, more seamless, easier to understand. We have to ask, okay, when things are fast, are they inherently better without all of that? Not quite. Amazon is kind of a good testament to this. And Amazon presents a lot of good examples of good user experience because they're able to quickly check things out, test them, tweak them. If they don't work, put in something else. They've got a big enough user base to do that kind of testing with, which is great. One thing that I still have a problem with, though, is their one-click checkout process. It's fast. It's easy. You don't have to think twice about it. And sometimes that's great, but sometimes it's not. Just because it's efficient doesn't mean that it's effective. As a kind of proof point of that are the many ways that Amazon says, oh, did you screw up? Did you click confirm too soon? Did you say, oh, that wasn't quite the product I wanted to get this time, or I forgot that I have a different credit card that I want to associate it with, or I moved and I forgot to give you my new address. There are a million different ways to say, oh, I screwed up. I need to undo that. That thing that was so fast wasn't really effective at meeting my needs this time around. So we can look at an example like that and say, okay, it was fast, but it didn't always work. So maybe not all experiences do need to be fast in order to be effective for our needs. So I want to look at that from another angle then. Just because something takes a long time, just because something consumes a lot of our time, does that necessarily mean that it's bad? YouTube says no. Think of how often we all go down those sort of rabbit holes on YouTube, or in this case, watching dog videos where you're like, I'm going to just watch this one video on YouTube. No one has ever watched just one video on YouTube. You watch like 8, and then you watch 15, and then you're like, oh, I don't know how I was supposed to be billing this past hour for my client, but whoops, I've been watching YouTube for an hour. These dog videos, which clearly are so important. I mean, as of last count here, more than 17 million people felt the need to watch this very informative video about dogs eating with people hands. I am a good portion of those 17 million, but still, it's not vital, important information. So we need to go back on that and say, all right, does that mean we need to speed up everything? Does that mean we shouldn't try to slow people down at all or put different processes in place to make them think more provocatively and with more attention about their experiences? Again, I went back to Jared on this. I always find it's a good idea to go to Jared with some of these types of questions. And he said, no, if the transaction is really small and insignificant, or if the user has gotten there after doing a ton of other research, don't get in their way. Don't slow them down. Let them keep going with it. Let them finish up the process that they've already begun. Don't make them rethink it. So that gives us the opportunity to then say, well, what experiences do users need to think through a little bit more slowly, focus on a bit better? Maybe work on creating memories and build on that sense of inner anticipation that we all yearn to really meet. How can we do that? So I want to look at a few ways to do that. First, I want to say, well, why should you even think about slowing down your users? When you think about your clients, or maybe if you're in-house at a corporation, the sort of different needs and user tasks that your corporation tries to help and fulfill, think about these sorts of issues. In general, if you're trying to help your users better explore a process, if you want to build on that sense of exploration and discovery, yeah, try to slow them down so that they can pay better attention to what's going on. Maybe look at the content in closer detail. Also, if you want to encourage more deliberate choices. In other words, if you don't want them to just be making snap decisions, kind of going through the Amazon one-click experience, but if you want them to really deliberate through their choices, then again, yeah, think about slowing them down. Or even if you just want to help them focus more and not be distracted by all of the other cruft on most websites. Think about some of these techniques. So the first way that we can do that, the first way that you can start trying to slow your users down is by looking at the editorial styles and structures that we're using. There are a lot of things that we tend to just default into, like bulleted lists. Everybody online loves a bulleted list. We need to think, okay, is that always the right thing to meet our needs and the needs of our users? So let's take a look at an example from Crutchfield Electronics. This is a website you'd visit, maybe if you're based in the US, although I believe they're also supported globally, if you're interested in buying home audio equipment, researching consumer electronics, maybe a new camera lens. You go here and you can read a lot about those different products. You can see a lot of different types of content to support those different products. Video training, a lot of photographic examples. You can read comparison charts. They're meeting you in a lot of different ways, kind of the same way Disney World does. So a lot of different content types, and the editorial style that they've adopted is very conversational. It's kind of long-winded, you might say. They're not just speaking to people in bullets and brevity. Instead, they're adopting longer paragraphs that really pull people in. You can see some of the language that they use here. They're these long garden path sentences that are, again, very conversational. It sounds like you're sitting down with somebody over a cup of coffee and saying, hey, I'm thinking about buying a new camera lens. Can you tell me more about that one that you just got? What was the shopping experience like? Crutchfield gives you that same kind of sense of dialogue almost as you're learning about the product, discovering what's right for you, thinking, oh yeah, this will fit really well into my existing camera kit, that sort of thing. Fidelity, a financial organization, they do a really good job with that too. So when you first visit Fidelity, maybe you're thinking about your retirement savings and whatnot, if you've been saving up enough, all of those sorts of things. At first blush, when you land on their homepage, they really just want you to make one quick decision. Are you here to learn more about trading funds, retirement, or just funds in general? Go down one of those paths. They don't put a lot of content in your way to slow you down. But if you're thinking about something that's maybe a more emotionally fraught decision, maybe you've been saving for retirement a long time, but now you're thinking, oh, I want to take some of that money out early. In the US, at least, if you decide to take out of your retirement savings before age, I believe, 65, you can do it, but you're hit with really big taxes on that money. So in general, most financial advisors say don't do that. With Fidelity, if you're kind of controlling that interaction yourself by visiting a website rather than a financial advisor, they want to be able to present a similar sort of experience. So after you make that initial decision of what am I here to do today, if you decide, okay, I'm here because I want to take money out of my retirement savings early, they slow you down. The content becomes a lot longer. They speak to you in long paragraphs because this is a serious thing. They want to make sure people understand the implications. Now, they could take the approach that a lot of human financial advisors do, which is to kind of talk down to people sometimes and say, are you sure that's what you want to do? But they know for their users, for the type of investors they work with, that would be kind of demeaning. They would be talking to them like their children, so they don't do that. Instead, they present the information in slightly longer sentences so that you have to spend more time thinking through the process of, is this what you definitely really, really, really want to do? So moving away from Fidelity, back to the world of retail, where there's lots of good examples. If we look at the brand Patagonia, they sell online apparel, they sell apparel online that is loved by people that are hikers and mountain climbers. If you're climbing up Everest or something, you probably have some Patagonia with you. Or if you live in Seattle where it rains 99% of the time, you probably also have some Patagonia. I see Sam here nodding on that. I don't know where Bill is sitting now, but yes, I'm sure he too has some Patagonia in his closet, right there. Thank you, model. So Patagonia, their products are really loved by outdoorsy people or people that live in cities that are basically underwater with the amount of rain there. And when they're pitching their products online, they've got a few concerns to keep in mind. One is that their products have a very narrow target audience. It's for people that can afford to spend a little bit more on very functional apparel, but it's apparel that lasts a really long time. It's very well made. They also know about their target audience that these are people that like to research, that like to read about their products and how their products can be used before they commit to making that purchase. Also, they know that their target audience likes to support environmental efforts. Environmental companies, environmental sustainability initiatives, all that comes through in Patagonia's content. So again, here, rather than just giving people bulleted lists, they take them into these really inviting paragraphs and very visual, pictorial language about the products, about their springtime shaded billets at the creek. It's like a warm sweater that gets warmer with age. It's really beautiful copywriting for a retail brand. That plays out as well in their shopping cart. They don't just dump you into a form that's like name, address, city, state. Instead, they're saying things like dot those I's and cross those T's. Here's why we need that kind of information. Here's why it's important to fill it out that way. All the instructional copy speaks to their users in the same way as well. It isn't right for brands that just want to rush someone through the shopping experience, but that's okay. Patagonia doesn't. They want to say, okay, make sure you're making the right decision before you leave this page. So another way that you can slow down users is by focusing more broadly on different content types that encourage that kind of discovery, comparison shopping, that type of thing. So again, going back to Patagonia, they do something that a lot of retailers are really scared to do. They actually merchandise in the shopping cart. I know when I talk with retailers, especially about that, when I say things like merchandise in the shopping cart, it's like you can hear the air rush out of the room as they all go, but it's not so bad. It's right for some brands to tell their audiences, are you sure that's what you want to buy? I see you just put that in your shopping cart, but are you sure that's what you want? Do you want to look at a different color, consider a different size? For Patagonia, that is by design. It's because not only are they trying to sell product, but they also want to make sure that they're doing it in a fairly environmentally friendly way. Now, something about Patagonia, they have great customer service. If you get a product, you get home that jacket or sweater, and you're like, I don't think it really fits me as I was hoping, or I don't like the look of this color when I see it in person, I'm going to just send it back. That's fine. They offer free shipping both ways. So it's free for the user. It's free for the person that ordered that jacket, but it is really expensive for the environment. The overall carbon footprint of shipping a product multiple times across the country, that's not so environmentally friendly. So Patagonia wants to make sure before you buy that thing, that jacket or whatever that's in your shopping cart, consider it. Is this really the color that you want? Do you want to maybe read a few more reviews, see some similar products that might fit your need a little bit better? And they do all of that by prompting you through content in the shopping cart. By going through that process of saying, yes, this is what I want, they're also tapping into that basic way that we confirm our own opinions. It's great to read reviews of what other users have said, but it's even better when you can kind of check against your own gut, when you can gain more empirical proof by saying, is this what I want? Yes, this is still what I want. Is this still what I want? Yes, this is still what I want. When you go through that cycle of saying, yeah, is this right? I'm going to deliberate on it, think about it a little bit more. When you validate it, that's telling your gut, yes, this is still the right purchase decision for you. Patagonia is tapping into that in a really effective way. But in order to do that, they need to give their users the content and the questions to say, okay, are you sure? Is this really right? Another brand that does a good job of this through some of their choice of content types is REI. So they're another outdoor retailer based in the US. And when you visit one of their stores, maybe to buy a new backpack or something to go on a camping trip, or to go hiking or something like that, what might happen is that you walk into the store, you walk over to the area where they have the backpacks, maybe take a few down off the wall and see how they fit. You try them on. They have little bean bags there that are weighted in different ways so that you can put a few in the bag to see, okay, if I typically carry about 10 pounds or 15 pounds or whatever in my backpack, I want to see what that feels like so I can put it on again and check it out, maybe walk around the store in it a little bit. Because they want to make sure that you're making the right purchase decision while you're there. You can also read more about the products as you're standing there, pick up some of the different product literature, the different reviews that they themselves have crafted or printed out from off the website that are all there in the store to say, all right, is this the right product for me? Online, you can't do that quite so easily. You can't try on a backpack quite as easily. But they still want to make sure that you can go through the process of considering different options, deliberating, deciding what's really right for you. So they do that by saying, all right, let's put in a basic comparison tool, drag in the options, drag in different backpacks that you might be considering, and look at the different variables side by side. That's not a new concept, but we can consider the implications of that sort of mode of interaction, of that sort of mechanic, as far as how it helps us slow people down and say, all right, is this really the right choice? Before you make this purchase, get it right, weigh the options, check in with your gut and say, is this right for me? IKEA does that as well. Before I ask, does anybody here ever shop at IKEA? First, let me ask, is there anyone that has not ever been in an IKEA? Fabulous. We've all been down that nice little blue and yellow path before sitting in Pwang or seeing Billy. Awesome. So I'm glad we're all on the same page there. And you know, IKEA is designed to pull you through the experience, to open drawers, to look in cabinets, to see what's inside, to see the number of books that can possibly fit on the Billy bookcase bookshelves and all before you bring them home. It's great in that way. The website also attempts to do that. So again, they could have just said, for this particular shelving system, we're going to list out in bullet points the cubic capacity or the number of books it can hold. But instead, they said, all right, how can we make it just like the in-store experience? Well, we want to make sure that it's hands-on. We want to offer people ways to swipe into it, to see what's in there, to engage with the content, not just read it, but to engage with the visual content in a really hands-on way and discover for themselves, to go through that process of personal discovery to gain empirical proof of exactly what can fit into those bookshelves, exactly what can fit into that cabinet before you order it, before you bring it home, any of those types of things. And for IKEA, even if you don't get it at first blush, even if you don't first look at that cabinet and say, oh, I see how to interact with it, they offer a lot more content to say, here's how. Here are the details. Here's how you can dig into it. There are all these different ways that you can interact with our graphics, because they want to make sure that you're gaining that kind of experience with their content. So a third way that you can slow down your users is by deploying more long-form content. Crutchfield, as I said, does this really, really well. If you go there to research a camera lens and you start out maybe reading the page about a particular lens, you'll be in for a ride. It's a really long page. It's one of those pages that if you printed it out end to end, it would go from like here to the moon and back 3 times. This is the slightly more environmentally friendly way of looking at it. And it's an effective page. They can look at their analytics and see that people go there, start reading, and read all the way to the bottom, and then want more. They click and say, give me another page that's just as long so I can keep reading about it. We wonder if long content can really work. We wonder if people are really in for the long haul of lots of paragraphs. Crutchfield doesn't wonder. They're like, yeah, more paragraphs. The more paragraphs we have, the more time we keep people here, the more we see our sales go up, the more we see happy customers that report really positive things about our brand. Content is paying off for them. REI does that too. It used to be that you could take your dog into a store to fit him or her in a backpack and say, okay, what's the right backpack if my dog wants to go hiking with me, or if I want to take my dog hiking with me. And for once, I want them to carry their own little dog treats in their water bowl because they shouldn't just be freeloaders like that. Now they offer that content on their website, how to fit your dog with a doggy backpack. And it works. On the left, you can see a lot of good content about that. On the right, you can see a dog I know well, Ringo, who loves his backpack. This is also a good testament to the fact that science has shown German Shepherds love long-form content. You can see, loves it. That is a dog that loves content. Also hiking. Patagonia, they've really staked a lot into this. They invest in long-form content and also what I think of as sort of the visual equivalent of it. So when they reach out to their target audience, they tend to do a lot of work funding different explorations, funding different sort of expeditions, first ascents of different mountains, all of those types of things. And they love to have people come back and write content for them about it. They also fund people that are photographers to go out and gather up beautiful images that then they showcase in the photography on their website. And they do that to get their users to slow down when you come to the site, to act deliberately and make more conscious choices, more conscious decisions, and to really focus on what you're trying to do there. So some of that focus is in one section of their site that isn't devoted to product at all. They have an environmental blog there called The Cleanest Line. And when you go there and focus on it, you can read about their different activities, maybe funding dam removal projects, plastic bag bans, all of those types of things. And they're not saying, you know, the next time you're helping out at a volunteer cleanup effort at your local park, this is the perfect jacket to wear for the situation. They're not telling you more about their own product there. Instead, they're just saying, focus on this content, read about it. All right, and then if you're interested in product, we can go off to that part of the site. But when you're here, just focus on this. They're really honoring the user that way. They're really respecting the user, respecting their own content. Same thing happens with the visual imagery. When you land on the homepage, they're not saying, okay, are you here to buy our latest product that's on sale this week? Or first, decide what you want to do. Take in this image, then decide, are you going off to our blog? Are you going to read about product? Are you going to maybe buy a new jacket? You make the choice, but first, center yourself here. So we have to ask, does that actually all work? Because this is all, it sounds really, really nice. Might take a little bit more work, but does it pay off? And I asked that question of a report that came out from the Outdoor Industry Association. So every couple of years, they put out these reports kind of talking about environmental policy, sustainability, all of those types of things. And they said, so if we look at the period of the recession from 2005 to 2011, we actually did pretty well. We grew at a rate of 5%. That's not bad in a recession. But REI, they did even better. While the rest of their industry was growing at a 5% rate of return year over year, they grew at a rate of 11%. During that time, they were continually investing in content that is above and beyond what their competitors are doing. If we look at that in comparison to their closest competitor in the US, Eastern Mountain Sports, something interesting was happening. REI was opening new stores at the same rate that EMS was closing stores. Every time they open a store, it's another opportunity for them to put their printed reviews, their kiosks, as well as their employees that can offer a lot of information, put all of that in front of their audience. EMS, they were getting rid of a lot of those touch points. Now, when we look at Patagonia specifically, I had the opportunity to sit down with their creative director and learn more about their content strategy. And he said, yeah, we keep things pretty simple. Basically, we stay as close to our core market and what they're interested in, what they love to read about and all, as possible. We've always had this sort of literary storytelling component to the brand, and that's great. It works for us, but it makes sense. It sticks with what we say. Buy less stuff, but make sure what you buy lasts. Now, that's not right for every brand. That is a scary proposition to many brands, but it's right for a brand like Patagonia. It's right for their environmental focus. He went on to say, yeah, on a short-term basis, this doesn't help us sell more product, doesn't meet like your weekly sales goal, business guy, but this isn't about short-term ROI. We're in this kind of for the long haul. This is right for us and for our target audience. This is kind of our Willy Loman moment. So if you care about content, you should also care about Death of a Salesman. In Death of a Salesman, in the second act, Linda Lohman turns to her husband. She looks at him and then she looks out at the audience and she says, if we care about this person, if we really value him on the earth, we need to pay attention. And her kind of big defining quote there is, attention must be paid. Well, if we care about our users and if we care about the brands that we represent, we need to give them the same kind of attention, the time and space to be and to discover and to focus. We need to invest in content that isn't just about bullet points and brevity, but maybe is a little bit more long form and engaging. Whether it's visual or verbal content, it needs to be right for the brands that we serve. So we need to go through that process of respect, and that is not easy. But for Patagonia, it means looking at their content and saying, in the middle of our environmental blog, we're not going to be pitching some product at you. We're going to allow you to focus and be here now. That's tough. It's daring and bold and brave. But it also means that when you're looking at product there, they're not telling you about their latest environmental initiative. They're not telling you about a great pair of pants that would go with that jacket. Instead, they're saying, okay, focus, learn about this particular product. When you put it in your shopping cart, then maybe you should learn about some related items that might better fit your needs, but focus while you're here. Be here now. Disney World does that too. They're saying, when you're here, don't be on your phone, don't be checking your watch. Not that anybody has a watch anymore. Don't be back on your iPhone or whatever. Be here now, learn, lay down memories. And I think that means also coming into Portugal, coming here. It was an opportunity for me to be here now. And I think we can learn from that too. So thank you very much. Obrigada.